Today is Monday, and we are rejoicing at the wonderful news that Brother Andrew Caulfield has come off of his ventilator. His wife said he is blowing kisses and said to tell everyone that he loves them. And so we are all flying kind of high um, in gratefulness and thankfulness. I have been near giddy with relief for Brother Andrew. I know we've all been so concerned. We've all been praying and fasting, and people literally around the world have been praying for Brother Andrew. We're so thankful for it. But even with our gratitude, we are also still so concerned about Brother Tim and Brother Oscar Bajek and his wife, Sister Mela. They are still in intensive care. They are still on ventilators. And so while we are rejoicing at the good news, we are also still very burdened and concerned for our brothers and sisters who are still suffering. My mother-in-law is going to get to come home today from the hospital also, and Brother Kittner is still hospitalized, so we're still praying for him. So we find that we're back and forth on the spectrum of the emotional scale, or we're very happy, we're very excited, and we're also very concerned. So in these moments of finding ourselves going back and forth, it's for the first time I think some of the males of the species are seeing what it feels like to swing on the pendulum from ecstatic to tears. And the women, of course, we've been on the emotional roller coaster of hormones our whole lives. So this is a shared experience, maybe for the first time in our households. But I want to talk just for a few minutes today about guarding our mouths during this time. Our thoughts are like, imagine that they're like little stick figures, and they are formed in our minds, and they are shaped by our emotions, and then we dress them up with our words, and we bring them out for display. And they join a little parade outside of our bodies, and other people interact. Other people's thoughts and words, are interacting together as the thoughts that come out of our mouth are marching around. And some people are very, very cautious. They form their thought. They mull it over. They perfect it. They shape it until it's exactly what they mean to portray, and then they dress it very carefully with their words, and their words are very carefully chosen. It's almost like they send them out, and they're wearing couture garments that the buttonholes are bound. They have a bound buttonhole. They have a Hong Kong hem in the bottom. The fabrics are polished and shined, and they're quite beautiful. Others of us, our thoughts are these half-formed creatures, and they're barely out of the womb of the thought process before we just slap some clothes on them and out they come. And then we dress them all along the way. We'll snatch them back. No, that's not what I meant. We'll fix it, or we'll adjust it. No, come back here and put a bow in its hair. Or no, come back. Let's put a red coat on. That orange coat doesn't work. Some of our thoughts are almost like works in progress, and we just pitch them right out there. And this can be very difficult, as you can imagine. Imagine that if one person's thought process and word process, they're little soldiers marching in line in their uniform, and it's doing exactly what it was supposed to do, and then they come up on someone else's thought process, and it's like a circus. This can be discombobulating for people. Now imagine that all of these people who with different thought processes and different ways of expressing themselves, they're all stuck in a house together. There's been a lot of togetherness lately. Imagine that the circus and the marching band are colliding, and the marching band people, things are not in order, and the circus people, well, you're a little rigid. Y'all may know some people like that. I happen to know a couple of folks who live in my household who think differently and express themselves differently. And so I'm going to talk mainly to the circus people today. We know who we are. Um, we need to rein the monkeys in. We need to, in these times of lots and lots of togetherness, and especially when people are stressed, we need to be very careful with our thoughts. Um, think them in your head, of course, but not every thought that goes through your head has to come out of your mouth. And especially during these times, we need to run our thoughts through a couple checklists of, is this important to say? Because if it's not, then you might be loosing a herd of monkeys. They're not herds. I don't know what monkeys are. Caravans, or I think apes are called a congress. Actually, a group of apes, or a congress of gorillas, maybe. Perfect example. There you go, right there. Thinking out loud. It can be bothersome to the people in your household. So not every thought that goes through your head has to come out of your mouth, and definitely not every emotion that comes through your rises up out of your innermost being has to be clothed and come marching out of your mouth to join the parade. And I read today, I was reading in Psalms, and Psalms 141 says, Lord, set a guard for my mouth and watch at the door of my lips. Do not let my heart turn to any evil thing or perform wicked acts. And then if we skip down to 5, let the righteous one strike me. It is an act of faithful love. Let him rebuke me. It is oil for my head. Let me not refuse it. I have for us a prescription. If you need one, consider this your very own personal prescription. And it is a prescription for a can of Hush Your Mouth. Some folks call it a can of Shut Up. I don't know which is particularly appealing and appropriate for your verbiage, your vernacular, the way that what is okay and what is not okay where you are. So you can call it Hush Up if you like. But some of us need a small can. If you will notice, some of us need a very small can. And that's probably the thoughty ones among us, those who think and then out of their mouth comes exactly what they mean to say. But there are others of us who tend to, especially when emotions run high and judgment runs low, we tend to pop off or to say things sarcastically or with unkind tones of voice or unkind words. And right now, we're all living on top of a kindling box, and it doesn't take much of a match right now to spark things in our households right now, and that could set someone off either with frustration or with disappointment or with anger or all of the negative ways that we can affect each other. So some of us might need a slightly larger can, and so as not to offend the gentleman, I have put skirts on all of our cans of Shut Up today. Because I am the one in my household who needs it the most, my own personal self. For some of us, this is enough. However, there are some of us for whom a number 10 family size can might do the trick. And I'm trying to say that in a humorous way, to say we all need to put a guard over our mouth, and we all need to be especially cautious and careful at these times. We should do it all the time, of course, but especially now. I overheard my husband's children's mother snap at one of her precious darlings yesterday. She had asked said offspring to remove an offending item from the hallway and to take it out to be put in the trash. And the child replied that they would in a moment. And, of course, the moment didn't arrive. And about an hour later, when my husband's children's mother came back through, there was the offending item still right in the middle of the hallway. And she snapped at that child and said, "This is exactly why I want you to do it when I tell you to do it." And she was less than kind, and she was less than gracious. And she did not put a guard over her mouth. And so this child who is hurting, this child who has been in agony for the last few whiles because his grandmother has been hospitalized and see her again, and his youth pastor has been on a ventilator, and he has been agonizing in prayer for this precious man that he loves. And the dear people in her church who are hospitalized and suffering, he's under a lot of pressure. He's feeling a heavy weight right now, even as a teenager. And instead of his mother being gracious and being kind, his mother snapped at him, and she did some damage in that moment, in just an instant. She did some damage that may take days or weeks or several pans of brownies to maybe fix, because she wasn't cautious and careful, and because she let her emotions be in charge instead of wiser thinking. So I remind myself of Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson was a champion boxer. He had spent millions and millions of dollars in gym, equipment, and in training, and in the very best trainers, and he had built his leg muscles and his core muscles and his boxing muscles. He had built himself till he was as strong as he could possibly be. He knew how to bob and weave and duck. I think those are the terms anyway. Whatever it is that boxers do to hit the other guy and try not to get hit. He knew how to do that fairly well because he had already been a champion, and yet, in one instant, overcome with his emotions unchecked, his mouth did millions of dollars worth of damage. He did more damage with his mouth than he ever did with his fist, because in this moment of heated exchange, when he is wrapped up with one of his opponents, he bit that man's ear off. Like, he put his ear in his mouth and chomped on it. I can't even imagine what was going through either of their minds. But it ended up with a man missing a piece of his ear. And for the rest of his life, Mike Tyson will not just carry the title of the heavyweight champion. He will bear the title of ear chomper. He's the guy who took a piece of his opponent's ear off. And yet, if we are not careful, we can do the same thing. All of our years of practicing our faith, all of our years of doing our best to do our best, if we're not careful when we are overcome with emotions, our mouths can do so much damage. They could follow us the rest of our lives. And so if you've ever gone Mike Tyson on somebody with your words, if you've ever chewed somebody's ear off with your words, now might be a really good time to offer an apology. And apology has 3 steps. Apology is, number 1, I am sorry, I did wrong. And it's never followed by but you, or because you, or when you. It's I did wrong, I could have done better. That's number 1. Number 2, second part of apology, is it's not okay for me to do this, and I won't do it again. Number 3, part of apology is how can I make this right, or how can I make this better? And sometimes people don't accept your apology the first time, because sometimes we try to come in with a Band-Aid and hand somebody a little piece of gauze and a tube of ointment and say, oh, dude, I'm sorry. Hey, son, I'm sorry. Hey, daughter, I'm sorry. Husband, wife, I'm sorry. And we want it to be all better. And they're standing there with their ear half ripped off. They're standing there with, blood dripping down their neck. And they're not ready yet for your apology. And no matter how sincere you are, you come back with a little blood in your mouth. They lean back without a piece of their ear, or their heart, or their trust. So when we come to someone to apologize, we need to come with a sincere spirit of repentance and regret, and not say, because you wouldn't let me go, I bit your ear off, or because I was angry with XYZ and while we were fighting, I bit your ear off. I let my emotions get out of control. I bit you. I'm sorry. I spoke harshly to you. I didn't fulfill my promise. I didn't fill in the blank. Just own up to your part of it, whether they ever own up to their part or not. I am sorry for what I did. You do not deserve to be treated like that. No one deserves to be treated like that. And then number two, and it is not okay that I did it. And this is especially important if you are the person in authority, if you are the parent, if you are the boss, if you are the one who has the power in the relationship. It's especially important for this part of the apology to say, no one deserves to be treated like that. And it's not okay for me to do that. I want you to know that it's not okay that I did that. And number three, how can I make this right? And do your best to do whatever they say. You know, if a pan of brownies will do it, you're getting off easy. Do your best to make things right. If you've broken something that belongs to someone else, you need to replace it. If you embarrass someone in public, then you need to apologize publicly. Whatever it takes to make that thing right, you need to do your best to do it. In my case, I'm going to be doing my best to make it right for a while. And I'm using that example because that's a mild one. And I'm telling you, I've probably taken paint off the wall before with something that wasn't nearly as mild. And so I've done a lot of repenting in my life over the tone of voice that I've used. And I've done a lot of repenting to my children for raising my voice to them, for treating them without the respect that they deserve, because they deserve to be respected. They deserve to be treated with respect, even when they're being corrected for maybe something that they've misbehaved in. They still deserve respect. And so in these next few days, as when emotions run high, judgment runs low. So in these next few days, when we find things rising up out of our hearts, emotions overwhelming us, what we don't want to do is we don't want to do harm with our mouth. We don't want to do harm with our words. We don't want to say things like, well, you don't care about me, or you don't love me, or I can't even come up with all of them that could be hurtful, but you know where you're tempted. So let's be very careful with our written words, with our texting and our voicemails. Let's be very careful with our words to our people, that we don't sin with our mouth because we're overwhelmed with our emotions. Let's make sure that we are in charge of them. And you might want to get your own little reminder. You might want to, put a little sticky note on your mirror every morning, or I find it especially helpful to memorize scripture. Lord, put a guard over my mouth. And one that I learned as a child, I was forced to learn it as a child because I had to write it about 500 times. My mother had unique punishments for us, or not punishments, but corrective opportunities, attitude adjustment opportunities. And it was, let the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, my strength and my redeemer. Is that I want my words and actions not to be acceptable in my heart, because my heart can justify a lot of things, or not even justifiable to society, because our society will justify a lot of things. Not to my culture, because my culture will justify a lot of things. Let the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be acceptable in the sight of the Lord, in your sight, O Lord, my strength and my redeemer. So today, as you maybe are closing out your evening, maybe you could ask the Lord to help you to set a guard over your lips and over your words, because when we come out of this thing, we will have planted seeds in the hearts and lives of the people that are in our homes and the people that we're interacting with. Hopefully, you're not going out, but in the words and actions that we have shared with our people that are going to grow something. And we want them to grow life, and we want them to grow healing and hope. And we want to have as few thorn bushes to have to dig out as possible. May the Lord bless you and keep you and make his face to shine on you. Amen.